All right, so, sometimes we get these deep dives and they're like fascinating and we learn something, but then some are just, well, they're downright terrifying.
Yeah, some stories just stick with you, yeah?
Yeah. This one's definitely one of those. It's about a man who built this whole fake life. For almost 20 years, he pretended to be someone he wasn't. And when it all started to fall apart, well, let's just say it ended very, very badly.
Yeah, we're talking Jean-Claude Romand. It's a story that really makes you question everything, like how well you can ever really know someone.
And for this one, we're mostly relying on his Wikipedia entry. It's actually amazingly detailed.
It is, yeah. There's been a lot written about this case, but the Wikipedia page gives you a good overview of just how twisted this whole thing was.
So, Jean-Claude Romand, he was born back in 1954 in a small village in France. Pretty normal childhood, as far as we know. But then things take a turn when he starts medical school.
Right. Seems like a promising path, a smart kid, go to be a doctor.
Right.
Except he doesn't actually make it through medical school. He fails his exams, first year, second year.
But, and this is where it starts to get creepy, he doesn't tell anyone. He goes back home to his family, his friends, and pretends he's still studying, still passing his classes.
And you have to wonder, at that point, what's going through his mind? Is it shame? Is it fear of disappointing everyone? Or is there something deeper, something darker already at play?
And the craziest part, this little lie, it just spirals out of control. It goes on for years and years, 18 years to be exact, 18 years of pretending to be a doctor.
18 years. It's hard to even fathom maintaining a lie that big for that long. It's not just one lie either, it's a whole web of them, an entire fabricated life.
Right. He tells everyone he's working for the World Health Organization, the WHO in Geneva, a researcher working on important projects, meeting high-ranking officials. He even makes up stories about researching arteriosclerosis, rubbing elbows with politicians. The whole 9 yards.
And all this time, he's not actually a doctor. He never finished medical school. He's literally just wandering around the WHO building in Geneva, pretending to work. Can you imagine the mental gymnastics involved in that? The constant fear of being found out.
I mean, it's insane. Think about it. Every day he's putting on this elaborate performance, and when he's supposed to be on these business trips, he just checks into a hotel in Geneva and reads medical journals and travel brochures, all to keep up the charade.
It's like he's living in this constant state of paranoia. Every interaction must be so calculated, so carefully constructed.
And how's he funding all this? He's not earning a doctor's salary, that's for sure.
He starts by selling an apartment, but then he starts dipping into his wife's income. Then it gets even worse.
Yeah, he convinces his relatives to give him money, tells them he's investing it in these high-yield foreign funds, promising them huge returns, basically running his own little Ponzi scheme with the people who trust him most.
The betrayal, the manipulation is just mind-boggling. Can you imagine being one of his relatives, finding out all this later? It's just devastating.
Totally. And there's this one incident back in 1988 that really makes you question what he's capable of. His father-in-law, Pierre Crollet, dies after falling down the stairs.
And it's ruled an accident, but, well, there are a lot of suspicious details. Right before the fall, Crollet had asked Romand to return some money he'd invested with him.
And Romand was the only witness to the fall. The really chilling part is that the rescuers who found Crollet, they reportedly heard him say, with his dying breath, Jean-Claude. Like he was trying to say something about Romand.
Right, Jean-Claude did something to me. But he never finishes this.
And what does Romand do? He takes the oxygen mask off of Crollet, claiming it was hindering his breathing, and he was trying to ensure his father-in-law was
Even though it was never proven, it definitely casts a shadow over everything that happened.
And what does Romand do after Crollet dies? He organizes the funeral, sets up a fund for donations, then pockets all the money. The lack of empathy, the cold-heartedness, it's just astounding.
It's a preview of what's to come, really.
Yeah.
Because things spiral even further out of control.
Fast forward to January 1993. Romand's world is about to come crashing down. His lies are catching up to him, and he's starting to panic. But instead of confessing, of facing the music, he decides to do something truly horrific.
This is where the story takes that really dark turn, the kind of turn that's hard to even talk about.
He starts planning. He withdraws a large sum of money from the bank. He gets a rifle from his father, a .22. Then he goes out and buys a silencer and some gas canisters. And get this, he asks the store to gift wrap them. Gift wrap.
It's a detail that really sticks with you, isn't it? It's almost too bizarre, too surreal to process.
And that night, he goes into his wife's bedroom and beats her to death with a rolling pin. He then positions her body in the bed, makes it look like she's sleeping.
It's calculated, it's cold, it's just monstrous.
Yeah.
And sadly, it doesn't end there.
The next morning, he has breakfast with his kids. They watch cartoons together, like a normal family. And then he takes them one by one back to their bedrooms and shoots them both in the head. His own children.
It's just, there are no words. The sheer brutality of it, the betrayal.
Then he gets in his car and drives to his parents' house, has lunch with them, and right after the meal, he shoots both of them and even the family dog. He's eliminating anyone who could expose him.
And it's not over yet. He still has one loose end to tie up. His former mistress, who was asking for him to return a large sum of money she had lent him.
He calls her up, invites her to dinner, tells her that Bernard Kouchner, the health minister at the time, will be joining them, still weaving his web of lies, even now.
He picks her up, drives her to a secluded spot, pretends they're lost, and then he tries to strangle her. When that fails, he sprays her with tear gas.
And here's the really strange part. After attacking her, he apologizes, then tells her she must never reveal what happened.
It's almost like he's momentarily lost in his own delusion, then snaps back to reality. It's a truly bizarre and disturbing moment.
She manages to escape, and Romand, he goes back to his house, where the bodies of his wife and children are. He watches TV for a while, then sets the house on fire, takes a bunch of sleeping pills, and tries to kill himself.
But of course he survives. The fire's put out, and he's arrested.
The sleeping pills were expired, by the way, and he timed the fire so that the road cleaners would be passing by and would see it. Makes you wonder if he was actually trying to die or just orchestrate another escape.
It definitely raises questions, yeah.
So his trial starts in 1996, and he's eventually found guilty of all the murders and sentenced to life in prison. He served 26 years before being granted parole in 2019.
He was released to a monastery with a lot of restrictions. He has to wear an electronic monitoring bracelet. He can't contact the families of his victims, can't talk to the media. Basically has to live a completely secluded life.
What's really fascinating is that his case really captured the public's imagination. There have been books written about him, like The Adversary by Emmanuel Carrere, which is also made into a film.
There were even TV episodes based on his story, on shows like Waking the Dead and Law and Order. I think it's because it touches on something so primal, so disturbing. The idea that someone we think we know could be capable of such monstrous acts.
The philosopher Jean Baudrillard, he had a really interesting take on the whole thing. He said that Romand's life wasn't just a lie, it was a whole parallel universe that he created for himself. And that everyone around him, they were almost complicit in this universe because they didn't want to see the truth.
It's a chilling thought, right? That we might all be capable of being deceived, of choosing to ignore the signs when something seems too good to be true.
It makes you wonder, doesn't it? How well do we really know the people in our lives? And what are we willing to overlook to maintain the illusion of normalcy, of happiness?
It's a dark question, but it's one that Romand's story forces us to confront. And I think that's why it continues to fascinate and terrify us all these years later.
It's a reminder that the truth, no matter how terrible, always has a way of coming out in the end. And the consequences, they can be truly devastating. And that's our deep dive into the chilling case of Jean-Claude Romand, a man who built his life on a lie and paid the ultimate price.
A story we won't soon forget.